to you here shortly. And we're pretty much live right now. And I'll set the link for you in the chat there for you. And we'll get that up on our website as well, too. The Liberal Voice page. But anyway, everyone, thanks for coming tonight. You know, it's probably not too many people watching live right now because we didn't post the link, but we'll get that out here shortly.
Do we need to do that?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go ahead and post it to the page.
Are you doing that, Tom?
No, you can do that.
Just the YouTube / Liberal Voice?
No, send the actual link that I pasted in the chat over there on the left.
You're also tech savvy right now.
Okay.
Takeover of the GOP, yeah?
Yeah.
That's it.
Posted.
Awesome. Very good job.
Although Facebook's being really weird with my computer today. There it is. Okay, good.
Perfect. Awesome. Alright, well, welcome everyone to our second live discussion. We had our first one last week, just to kind of get things started, and I think it went pretty well. I know I had a pretty decent time with it and all. So tonight we are going to be discussing, we have a few different topic points that we're going to be discussing, but first off, I want to give some introductions here. Tonight we have with us Marilyn. She's a page admin. And we also have Patrick. He's also one of our contributors on the page as well. And we had a great time last week with hanging out with him. And we got a new guest tonight, Mark. And not sure how long you've been with the page, but welcome.
Hi, how you doing?
Great, great, great. So first, wanted to start off by just kind of showing a couple things tonight. We got some new likes since last week, so some people are still hanging around and liking our page and our stuff that we post, which is nice. We did lose a few people, but we gained more than we lost, so I guess that's where we need to be.
All that matters.
Yeah, that's right. Some page stats that we have going on right now. I like to take a look and see what our demographics and stuff are, and it looks like you know, the 30 to 54 range is where we're kind of hitting at and such. And I like to do this to see what the top post was of the week, what went viral and such. And it looks like one of the posts we had, which kind of was something that was kind of a hoax. So that's kind of unfortunate. But the next one here, I'm sure one of us will know what this is. And let's pull that up. And I wonder who posted that.
That was mine.
Nice.
Yep.
Very
so,
nice.
Marilyn likes to make our memes and such for the page. She does a pretty good job with that. So that's kind of neat. So with all that said and done, let's jump into some of our topics we have for tonight. Now, I said it, the overall talk about Takeover the GOP, but we have some more things than just that that we're talking about. I think the first topic was what?
I have them right here. You want me to read them?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Do you want me to read them all at once or just the first one for right now?
Let's just start off with the first one and
Okay.
see what we can do from there.
Okay. Make sure I have good diction. Okay. The increasingly erratic trajectory our country seems to be set for as the Republicans become even more radical without many signs of normalizing and thus continued unnecessary conflict at the price of exploiting hard-working people.
Okay.
So I think, you know, bare bones what that means is they've just flown off the handle on the right side. We had reasonable Republicans at one point, and you know, once the Sarah Palin Tea Party, in my opinion, came in 2008 during, you know, the '08 elections, they just went crazy. The Tea Party just developed into something that it was not originally intended to even be, and they just flew off the handle, and now the politicians are just exploiting it.
Yeah, I know there was a poll that was done not too long ago. I think it was in December, where they polled the American people to see what was going on. And in that poll, 53% of the people, including 22% of the Republicans, said the GOP's views and policies have pushed them beyond the mainstream. And apparently that's up like 17% in previous years. And what's fascinating to me is 53% of those who were surveyed say that the politics and policies of the GOP are too extreme, which is no wonder why Obama got elected, in my opinion.
No, that's a telling figure. But if you look at the trend from approximately 1980 onward, it's been a push to the right. You had essentially 8 years of neoconservative rule. The executive branch seized power beyond anything ever seen in history before. There were a lot of unilateral policies inflicted on the American people, and I think what you're seeing here is momentum. I don't know what the Tea Party was originally meant to be, but I think that, you know, they're exactly where they want to be. I mean, there's an agenda there. There's definitely an agenda. So what the agenda is, I think, is in the North, take away workers' rights. We have Act 10 here in Wisconsin. We have right-to-work laws and a bill similar to Act 10 being pushed in Michigan. Ohio is now a right-to-work state. Indiana. These were all issues that were pushed in the northern states, and in the South they push social issues. They push right to life. They push church and schools. They push the Ten Commandments. So I think that there's a definite strategy with, I mean, going back to 1868, the Union versus the Confederacy. And they push one set of issues in the South and another set of issues in the North. They want to disenfranchise workers in the North and enfranchise religion in their base of ignorance in the South. Just, you know, what I see. So, anybody?
Yeah. Well, I'm just...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that you made an interesting point there about how I remember after the vote in the last election, the campaign, the electoral map looked almost exactly like the map during the Civil War, where you had Obama winning all the states that were in the Union, and you had Romney winning pretty much, with only I think 3 or 4 exceptions, all the states that were in the Confederacy. And I think that really goes to show that the interest, I think, with the corporations that have a lot of the money that are using the Tea Party and pushing that agenda in the South and pushing the workers' rights, the right to work, quote unquote, stuff in the North. I think that they've tapped into something culturally that I think has been there for a long time. And I question whether the Republican Party at the top levels even has any control over it anymore. I think it's really with the Citizens United, the people with the money behind the scenes, who are not only sort of, you know, corrupting the politicians of the Republican Party, but also on the lower level, you know, pushing the people with social issues to vote the way they want them to, and push the politicians in that direction.
Yeah, it seems like they're the part of the radicalized group of Republicans, and I'm not talking about the radical Republicans of the 1800s. They're much different than what they are today, right?
Yeah.
It seems like it has gone towards a more religious right, a lot of religious, with the South especially, and I see it up north here too. But it seems like they kind of latched on to that mentality of the religious views and are using that as their way to just keep going.
Yeah.
You know.
What is even up with just trying to change history and saying that our forefathers intended us to be a Christian nation? That is not at all true. Like, that's the exact opposite of what I was taught in public schools growing up. That's absolutely not true. And I've actually gotten into debates with, I'm thinking of one in particular, when the Chick-fil-A fiasco happened, and I got into a debate with this guy, and he started pulling out all the usual literature saying, well, this is Thomas Jefferson, blah, 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 this is what he said. I'm like, well, let me look up the actual documents here. And I pulled them out. I'm like, well, he's talking about this. This has nothing, you took it out of context. This has nothing to do with any of what you're claiming. And the conversation just sort of stopped. When I called them out on it, no other response. And I find that is usually what happens when I try and talk to somebody from the other side. They just make out these outrageous claims that are just not true. They try and back them up, and when I disprove it, they just go away.
Yeah, they shut up.
Yeah, they have nothing else to say.
The revisionism, of context, I think, is what you're talking about. You look at Obama's statement on I think it was a 60 Minutes interview, where he said that because of the changes in the Arab Spring revolutions, there were going to be democracies of one form or another, and that we could foster that, but there were going to be bumps in the road. And there were a number of Fox Noise commentators that took that. He calls 4 Americans dead at an embassy a bump in the road, and it's not what he said. It's not even close.
Yeah.
Completely out of context.
Yeah.
So they use what's convenient for them to use. They cherry pick, like we were talking about last week. They cherry pick and they use what they want for their own purpose.
Yeah, there was a Glenn Beck video. I don't know if anyone else saw it this past week, which essentially goes and he essentially explains how he manipulates people. I don't think that was his intention, but he talks about how all he has to do is take one little piece of information that's true, or a couple pieces of information, and then pretty much add whatever you want, and there's your conspiracy. And it seems like that's like the cherry picking, like you're saying. You go in, you take what little piece that's true, you got them hooked, and they're going to believe whatever you have to say after that, and they're going to believe it. It's just a belief that they're going to have.
Right. Well, my question is then, do we? Because if I hear something out of context, I'm sorry, Marilyn, I didn't mean to interrupt, but this just popped into my head that if I see a statistic or a statement, or I'm on Snopes, I'm on any number of sources, I'm checking, I'm looking, I'm researching. Do these people just take like the meme we talked about last week? You don't have to have a background check to be a president, but you do have to have one to be a gun or get a gun. I mean, this is just the most absolutely ridiculous thing that I've seen, and I didn't even have to Snopes that to know that it wasn't true. But do these people just look at this meme and go, yup, or do they jump on the computer? Do they go to the library? I mean, I think what we're dealing with here is ignorance, and it goes back to what I said in the first place. They attack education, they attack social services in the South, they attack unions and workers' rights in the North, and this is all an effort of a bigger picture to disenfranchise knowledge, disenfranchise intelligence, and make people that are actually thinking about, critically about issues seem like elite intellectuals or liberal intellectual elite or whatever.
Yeah, that's another good word. The elitism, that I hear that you think you're just so much better than me because you're educated or whatever it may be. But go back to your point there. It's if someone says something to me, I tend to have the thought process of, oh, let me go check that out. Other people that think differently, they'll say, well, it felt right to me. It felt good that I sided with that point. Whether or not it's a bigoted idea, like some of the gay rights issues that we've seen, because to them, that's just their personality. I mean, that's what it just pulls on their heart, and makes sense to them, you know.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Marilyn, what you were talking about rewriting history. One of the first blog posts I wrote for All Things Democrat last February was about this really weird case where the Tea Party, the state Tea Party in Tennessee, passed this bill that said that high school history textbooks were not allowed to talk about slavery or race relations or basically anything bad that had happened between blacks and whites in all of American history.
Wow.
Man.
And so, this is, so I mean, it's not only about religion, it's not just about the Founding Fathers. At some of the local levels is where some of the really weird stuff is happening. And, it goes back exactly to what George Orwell said about, who controls the past controls the future.
Yeah.
And I think there's this very strong urge at the grassroots level on the far right, and especially in the South, to rewrite history, like quite literally, and raise their kids in this idea of like white rural utopia. And that is something that I've been trying to keep an eye on quite a bit ever since. But.
It's really interesting. You say the white utopia, and I'm sitting here laughing because they're calling us the Nazis. So I'm fighting for the Aryan race here.
Yeah.
Well, that's another one too. The with the gun control, the quote that Hitler said that the first thing that you do to take over a country is to take away the guns. It was completely made up. I think it was, I forget the exact year. I think it was 1986 or something. There was some gun control campaign in Chicago, and there was this suburb of Chicago, I think it was Skokie, Illinois, that had a large Jewish constituency, and so this pro-gun rights group completely made up this quote out of thin air and ran a whole campaign behind it. And that's where the whole raise your right hand if you support gun control thing comes from. But that quote is only 20 years old.
I have my own personal story about that quote, because I'm going back to that time period, and remember being in church and someone coming up with a piece of paper in their hand, showing my dad. I'm like, Dad, what was that about? He was talking about Adolf Hitler taking guns away, and I can't believe that goes back that far, and it has just kept going and going and going. That's the thing. You get them to the point where they have the evil guy who obviously doesn't want anyone to have guns, so they're going to say, "Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense." But that's what Obama's trying to do right now. He's trying to take our guns. Meanwhile, he's out shooting clay pigeons.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the immediately skeptical response on my part when that meme came out, or not, it wasn't a meme then. God, internet didn't exist in 1986. I was 26 years old, but I remember it was tied to a group of white supremacists marching in Skokie, Illinois, which has a predominantly Jewish population. A lot of Holocaust survivors live there. My daughter lives there now, and I remember researching, that, and on the face of it, my first thought was, isn't this the same Adolf Hitler that gave a bunch of 12-year-old and 11-year-old kids a bunch of guns to go out and defend Berlin when the Russians started to approach? This is not a guy that didn't want people to have guns.
Yeah.
He liked guns.
Yeah.
And dogs.
When that quote started becoming big, Mother Jones did a big piece about the history behind that quote and everything with it, and that they showed the actual legislation that went on during the Weimar Republic, right after World War I. There was a big gun control campaign, but then when the Nazis took over, they relaxed all those laws. And what actually happened was the Nazis sort of cherry-picked the people who were allowed to have guns, certain like gypsies and Jews were not
Right.
allowed to have guns, but party members,
Well, if you're
people
our
in the
enemy,
military were allowed to keep
obviously
guns
you're
in
not allowed to
houses
have
and stuff.
guns.
And the interesting thing about that is that actually reflects the NRA's actual history, because during the 1960s, when the Black Panthers became really pro-gun, suddenly the NRA was all about gun control for the Black Panthers, but of course not for their rural white contingency.
Right, the politics of convenience. Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, going back to you talking about the topic, it seems like there's Republicans, quite a few of them have gone so extremely off to the right that I tend to think that from speaking to some friends that I have in other countries, when they look at America and they say, "You think you're liberal? You're nowhere even close to liberal. You're more of a middle of the road, moderate type of person comparative in our country." And it seems like the perception from them, and maybe they're all just really crazy liberals like us, but the perception from them is, how can you even deal with these people who have these ideas of trying to, everything from like the religious stuff and the nonsense that these people speak to, how can you deal with them? And yeah, they've gone really, really far to the right. And I don't know whether or not it was necessarily just the Tea Party. I know they had a big push, and I think the whole idea was that they were taxed enough already, and that was their whole kind of mantra. But it definitely turned into a lot of people jumping on that bandwagon, Republicans, to get themselves elected into Congress. But it seems like they've gone so far to the right that they're just throwing whatever they can out there, and whatever sticks and people believe, they're going to run with it.
Yeah. I've actually read up on the the birth of the Tea Party, and it came out of a time at the end of George Bush's presidency, and that is it. They were taxed enough. Things were turning into a mess. The economy was bad. And they wanted, they were more libertarian. They wanted less government control, more people controlling, and they had it. And it seems like the Republicans, they kind of jumped on it, and they got their organization just from this idea of the Sarah Palin idea of, we need to have small government. Anyone who says anything about federal government taking over anything is a socialist and a communist, and they just started throwing out all these isms that they didn't even understand what they were, and it just took off. Yeah.
And then, they throw out the words communism, socialism, and all those things, Marxism, and apparently Obama's all three of those at the same time. And a fascist.
And a really good capitalist, by the way.
Yeah, right. But even when trying to discuss that with someone who's on that side who thinks he wants us to be a communist society, they always throw out Russia in that, and how they were communists, and I'm like, they were. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought they were trying to move towards that paradise of communism, utopian society, and the majority of it still was a socialistic type empire.
Russia, the old Soviet Socialist Republics?
Soviet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That was the founding principles of the manifesto. Engels, Marx, Lenin. That is exactly what they were doing. However, you throw a guy like Joe Stalin into the mix, he was just a complete despot. And you look at you look at what they were trying to achieve versus having actual leadership rather than a consensus rule. I think we're a lot closer to a consensus rule in a lot of regards in this country, but the Tea Party wants things their way or the highway. They want they were co-opted, I think, not necessarily even by the Republican Party, but by the extreme right of the Republican Party, and they were co-opted by the Koch brothers and the corporations as well. And they were sent on missions.
Yeah.
Go out and protest this, go out and protest that.
Yeah.
They're, as far as I can tell, lunatic fringe, the entire Tea Party, including the ones that were elected in the last pass of Congress. And how do we deal with it? well, their membership is down to an all-time low.
Mhm.
They're becoming disenfranchised on every level, intellectually,
Mhm.
socially.
Mhm.
They're too extreme for most
Yeah.
Americans.
Yeah. And I've heard that recently, even Fox News is losing a lot of viewership lately.
Well,
And I
they
think
lost
a
Sarah
lot of
Palin.
that, yeah. But, they really pushed that Obama was going to lose and their boy
Mm-hmm.
Romney was going to win. And lo and behold, they were wrong. They were
Mm-hmm.
absolutely wrong. And not only did he win, but he won by a lot.
Yeah.
So they were very wrong, and I'm seeing more and more Republicans. Oh, I don't like that Fox News. I don't watch that Fox News, and it's a
Yeah.
good thing. It's a good thing. Get rid of that station.
So are they kind of just going to disintegrate themselves to a point, or is there something that we have to do more to try to educate people? I mean, the thing with Sarah Palin, I mean, we laugh about that because we can see some of her. I don't want to be rude, but some of the things that she spoke to were kind of ridiculous at times.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of people who watched Fox News, they watched it for her. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
liked her. They liked that she was from a small town, that she was this attractive lady, and for whatever you're gonna say, she has quite a following.
Yeah.
And does that go to the point of what a lot of those people on that side, they align themselves to be a little bit more simple-minded? I don't want to be rude, but
Well,
Why not?
what I think, Sarah Palin was or is really a lady of the people, and I think genuinely her heart is in the right place. She does try and be a good person, but she is just not smart. And she just lets her mouth just run off with whatever. And people follow it. Like, she is somebody to be heard and listened to when she's not exactly sure what it is she wants to be saying.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
I don't know if I agree with you that her heart is in the right place.
I don't think I do
Maybe-
either.
Well,
I
maybe
think
at
that-
one point her heart was in the right place, but and now that this whole, I'm talking about when she first started on running as vice president, the very beginning. She didn't strike me as very intelligent. I saw John McCain put her on the ballot because she's a woman, and it would kind of counterbalance the fact that Obama took over instead of Hillary Clinton, and be like, oh, we can get all the Hillary support over here because I've got Sarah Palin over here. And, honestly, I didn't even know who she was. She was very popular out in California and out in the West Coast, I guess. And I had a Republican friend who's like, you don't like her? I think she's great, and she stands for all these wonderful things. And I watched her, and I was like, what? Who is this? How could she possibly get is she supposed to be like a Dan Quayle?
There's no substance to anything she spoke to.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Dan
Yeah.
Quayle's
I just remember when-
Einstein next to Sarah Palin.
That's
Great.
very true.
Potato.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When she first started becoming big, the reason I say I'm not sure I agree with you that her heart is in the right place. When she first started becoming big, I remember hearing all these stories about her abuses of power. How she hounded her sister-in-law's ex or something like that as governor. Like, she got, I think, I forget exactly who it was. It was somebody in the family. It was a state trooper. She got him fired.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that was for personal reasons. And also on the campaign, she spent something like $250,000 of campaign money, or maybe it was $150,000, but she spent a lot of money on campaign money just buying clothes and stuff like that.
Well, they were trying to refine her look.
Shopping trips and things.
Yeah.
While McCain was hemorrhaging money. I think that Sarah Palin has always been in politics for Sarah Palin. I don't agree that she's like she's a misunderstood soccer mom. I think she's a ruthless manipulator.
Lipstick
Well,
on
also
shake.
is not very bright, but
Yeah.
is trying to be Machiavellian, I think.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard to be Machiavellian when you don't even know who, you've never read The Merchant Prince or know who
Right.
Machiavelli actually is. But it's like you say, Sarah Palin has always been all about Sarah Palin, and it's all about the superficial. I think she's essentially the poster girl for you intellectual elite can't tell me what the Constitution says. I've had it read to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she epitomizes the idea of the Constitution should be read the same way we read the Bible.
Right.
That's exactly how they respond to it.
The parts that we like,
Yes.
we just keep those. Like Leviticus, is famously quoting a man shall not lie with another man, but it also says don't get a haircut. So not really a problem for me.
Shellfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're shellfish, sure, and there are so many things about the way the Tea Party is represented by people like Sarah Palin and Ron Johnson from Wisconsin that just glorify. You don't need to verify any of these sources. Just believe what we tell you, and you'll be fine. No new taxes. No new taxes. Read my lips. No new taxes. And it's just a constant mantra,
Yeah.
And I, for one, am tired of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a constant mantra, like you say, and they speak the words that these people want to hear, and it sounds good, and to some extent it could be. However, they turn around and do the exact opposite thing, yet these people are still trusting of them, and I still don't get that. Fool me once, shame on me. Wait a minute, what was that? Yeah. Famous George Bush.
Fool me twice, shame on, we won't get fooled again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knew
But
that
over and
was
over.
a Who fan?
Yeah.
So I as far as changing any of that, I think it goes back to elections and legislation. We have to get people, we have to mobilize on the ground, get people like Ron Johnson and Jim Sensenbrenner and Aiken and whatever crazy pants is that resides in Arizona that's putting through legislation that says they have to carry babies to term as evidence of rape. We need to get these crazy pants people off the ballot. I mean, out of office and completely off the ballot. And that means I'm very active locally with a lot of different grassroots organizations. We are Wisconsin, Jobs Now, things like that. And I think we have to go out there. I think, this is a great place to talk about those things.
Yeah.
But boots on the ground, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got some feedback or distortion there, somewhat.
Yeah, turn it up to 11 and rip off the knob.
There you go. But
I don't
grassroots.
know.
Grassroots. It is grassroots, and I hope to be doing that with my neighbor, who is very involved with that. And when we chat, we talk. He's like, "Wow, you seem to know all the correct responses and how to debate these people. You need to join with me to help us get this message out here as well." I won't tell you what he does, but it is a position that is pretty politically connected, I guess, in some fashion. But it's about educating the people, but only if they want to actually be educated, I guess. And you can throw all the facts out there all day long that you want, but if they're not gonna say, essentially it's gonna be, I don't trust you, so I'm not gonna trust your facts, rather than, okay, I don't trust you, but I'm gonna go check your facts. They don't do that. Just like the opposite, where they trust someone who they trust.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Should we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, what we got for our next topic?
How the government might be able to curb the ill effects of our ever-growing deficit and the potentially bad outcomes this may have over this decade.
Yeah, I think we're totally at odds, Democrat, Republican, whatever, with the way to deal with tax reform. In one sense, you got, let's have the wealthy pay more of their fair share. On the other half, we need to reduce taxes on on the wealthy. You know, then we also got, do we do more stimulus, or do we do a huge austerity type measure? So there's quite a bit of no going on out there, especially from the side of Republicans. It seems like it's no matter what you go to, even to the point of capital gains and dividends, and even lowering those taxes. On the other side of it, I see, why don't we invest more in education that, you know, could benefit things, but they're just at complete opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to how we reduce these types of deficits. You know.
Well,
My feeling is that we're going to have to do a little bit of everything. You know, the Republicans are very much for slashing safety net programs, which is just, you know, how much more can you slash? I mean, the economy is creating a need for safety net programs. So to start there seems really anti-productive. Will it have to be addressed at some point? Will it have to come up on the chopping block? Are they going to have to reassess the boundaries under which people receive these safety net programs? Probably. But is it the place to start? I don't think so, personally. I don't think it's the right place to start. I think they need to start trying to increase revenue. You know, if you can keep your spending, you know, and you know, in my budget, if another bill is coming along or something's coming up, the first thing I do is, well, rather than change the lifestyle I have, what's going to be easier, to change something that I'm currently paying for, or can I increase revenue? Now, for me personally, it's easier for me to increase revenue because I'm a piano teacher. So, you know, I'll take on a couple more students because I get calls twice a week for a new student. That's not a big deal. And you know, I look at taxing the wealthy as a very simple way of increasing revenue. It's not like we're asking them to live like the rest of us here. We're asking them to, you know, take their 56-car garage and come down to 50 cars. You know.
Right, but,
you
but
know,
how much? Here's the point that you're going to hear. But how much more is that taxing the wealthy really going to bring in revenue?
Why deny it until you find out?
Well, I'm sure there's some numbers that are thrown out there. I haven't actually looked into it as much, but I do have a chart here that I can throw up. If you can see that, it's from the Congressional Budget Office. On the far left, some of you may have seen this before, is 1980 to 89, the 80s. The blue indicates discretionary spending, and then the red's mandatory, and the green is all revenue. Then we got the decade of the 90s. Discretionary, mandatory, and then revenues. Then look at the decade of the 2000s.
Well, look at the timing on it. I mean, all really we'd have to do is a revenue neutral sunset on the Bush era tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. And I've seen a lot of numbers on it, but essentially, you know, prosperity is not tied to these people keeping more of their money. It's tied to more of that money going back into circulation. That's what an economy is. It's money in circulation. It's living wage. It's, look, I get whatever I get per hour, okay? I don't hoard my money. I save a bit, but I'm going out and I bought a new pickup truck. And we go out and we have, you know, dinner, we buy clothes, we buy TVs, we buy things that other people make. Unfortunately, most of those goods are made, you know, I buy the Blue and I buy American every chance I get. But we need to develop an attitude of understanding where the money comes from and the money goes. I don't keep massive piles of money in a bank account in the Cayman Islands somewhere. I'm putting my money into circulation. And that's what unions do. They empower working people to bargain for a better wage and better benefits so that they can stimulate the economy by buying new cars. I mean, in the simplest terms, obviously. I'm not, you know, dealing with any sort of microeconomic model here. And I'm not an economist, but you're looking at people who are completely deluded into thinking that if they just give more money to the rich, then somehow they are going to become rich eventually themselves, even though they're giving their money to the rich. And it's a delusional model. And I think you're looking at a media presence that encourages that kind of delusion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No, it does. It makes sense to me. To further that point, when you look at folks who are making middle income families, their income that they spend out and use for bills and whatever they have left over, they're just on that breaking point of, if they get let go from their job tomorrow, they could be out looking for some sort of assistance that they would need to get through for the next however long they need to get a job. But these super massive wealthy people who just save up all this money, and we're told that, well, they're the ones that create jobs, they're the ones that pay more in tax because they're the ones that buy the yachts.
Yeah.
But the little guy who needs to purchase a vehicle to get to and from work, that really comes with a lot of thinking for a lot of families of where they're going to be able to afford and how they're going to spend that money.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking, people can be rich, they can have their money. It's just, is there a balance between taxing more? And is there a balance between cutting spending, the deficit, the discretionary spending with, I got another graphic here I'll pull up in a second, but it essentially, a lot of the money does go to our Social Security, social programs, but a huge chunk of that is military spending.
Right.
Being the police of the world.
Right. It's ridiculous.
I think I was going to say, do you guys follow Bernie Sanders at all?
Yes.
That's what he says in the Senate. I think.
Yeah.
I think I would argue that there is quite a lot more that we could do to tax the rich. I think that there's so much money locked up in the hands of even just the top 100, 400,000 or 10,000 people. I think something like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but something like a third of the economy is in the hands of only a few thousand people. And I think that not only is it economically bad, it's also politically dangerous to have so few people have so much influence, especially with Citizens United, and you have people who can throw around tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in a campaign. People like Sheldon Adelson or the Koch brothers. And I think that if we started really raising income taxes, and especially if we started taxing capital gains or investment transactions.
Yeah.
I think I saw some statistic where even like a 0.5% tax on investment transactions would generate some $1 trillion or $2 trillion a year or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
It would be an amazing amount of money, and it would barely affect Wall Street at all. There's a lot of really big money that's being thrown around that the government is just not part of, and it's essentially being siphoned out of the pockets of the middle class.
Yeah.
I think I would personally argue that I think that the Democrats and progressives in general should insist that we are raising revenue long before we do anything major to cut the safety net.
There's huge loopholes with offshore accounts with even companies like IBM. They do a lot of their business in Ireland. Google, they do the same thing with bringing these monies in to the Cayman Islands, to Ireland, to I think Amsterdam as well. There's like a whole sandwich thing with whatever, where they keep that money there. It's billions upon billions of dollars waiting for one of those tax holidays that we may have to bring that money back into the United States. And I forget the article. I could post it to the page again, but it was in the hundreds of billions of dollars that they can get out of because of these tiny loopholes where they just funnel this money off to these accounts. And Mitt Romney did the same thing with all of his, monies that he received in the capital gains. And people will say, well, hey, he already paid money on his income. Not at that point with him, because the money he gets is all just from his investment that he has. And there's even talk about how he funnels money through a annuity program that he had with the Mormon Church as well, where they get the money tax-free as a gift, a tithe, or whatever to the church, and he gets his money back tax-free. So there's stuff within the tax code that could be shut down. But then again, I don't get this. I don't know why this happens. But you'll have people who typically are on the right that'll say, "But if we did that, then they'll start laying off people just to keep more money that they have to pay tax on." I'm like, this is the mentality, that I deal with. So what do we do? What do we get to a point with the spending and the tax increases, the tax cuts? For me, I do fine with what I do for my career, my job, and if I have to pay a little bit more in tax to cut this deficit down, this spending, then so be it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. You know what infuriates me about that whole thing is that look at what we're really asking. Look at what we, the middle class, are willing and happy to do. When we go to bed at night, worried, so many of us just worried, am I going to have a job when I wake up tomorrow? Am I going to have to rely on this? And what are we really asking of the super wealthy? We're not asking them to worry about losing their job, losing their income. It's not like that money needs to be going anywhere or it's already spent. It's being hoarded, and there's no reason for it. There's no reason that they should be getting all these loopholes when we're the ones paying so much out of it. I pay, probably somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of my income to taxes, but they don't pay that.
No.
And it's wrong.
Well, extend that to the corporate welfare as well. We talk about the oil industry too. They get the tax benefits and such. That goes back to like 100 years or whatever, when oil was a new developing technology. But now that we want to develop things like solar panels and electric vehicles, for some reason, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We're going to waste money.
Yeah, they tend to. What I think we're talking about here are mechanisms to redistribute the wealth. And the only mechanism that we have as citizens for that redistribution is activism regarding taxation and tightening up the regulation of the financial industry. There are a couple things that allow these people to keep the money that they have and not be taxed on it. And those things are the Bush-era tax cuts to the very wealthy, and the lack of regulation and oversight from the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act, most notably, which actually happened during the Clinton administration. But the thing that Clinton did right, I didn't agree with NAFTA. There were a lot of things that Clinton did economically that I did not agree with, but the one thing that I agreed with governmentally was pay as you go. If you look at the tax rates right after the Great Depression, what FDR did with the tax code, he started taxing millionaires and billionaires. There weren't a lot of billionaires then, but money was worth more. He taxed them at 93%, and boom, and he started dumping money into public works projects, the CCP, the WPA, the Civilian Conservation Corps. There are parks, monuments all over the country that are testimony to the economic recovery that can happen with a massive stimulus program. Now, Obama went ahead and spent a paltry amount of money on stimulus, what the Republican Congress allowed him to spend. If he would have spent triple that, I think we'd be in a lot better shape. I think that the country as a whole would be up in skills, up in jobs, and up in income. Personally, in the lower and mid income range, and that's where I'm at with it. I just think we need to redistribute the wealth, pay as we go, and the only route that we have is taxation. Ease the tax burden, put more social safety programs in place, and start stimulus spending. But I'm pretty far to the left. over here.
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about social programs, all they hear
Communist.
is the word. Well, the word they say is entitlement, and I see this often with entitlement programs. I think it was on our page. Someone posted a picture about. There's a bunch of text about how don't go to the parks and feed the animals because they'll become dependent. And I replied back and I said, he said something about how it's ironic. I'm like, well, that's not irony, first off.
Right.
But to think of your fellow human being as an animal.
Yeah.
Come on, no, that's not really. And actually, on my own personal Facebook site, I saw other people post it as well too, and I was like, whatever, it is what it is. It's annoying, it's nonsense, but that's what they're going to hear is entitlement. Oh, they're going to sit at home and collect all this cash and money and food stamps and be able to go to the store and live up this lifestyle of pretty much being
McDonald's
poor.
99-cent program.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Seriously.
That's what they're pretty much espousing, and I dare you go a week and try that and see how you enjoy that. I wouldn't like it. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
They've done a wonderful job of selling it, haven't they?
They sure
have. Okay, you are going to get something that I don't get. I have to go out and work, and you're living on my tax dollar. Well, that's not fair. Well, what's not fair, I mean, take it up a level, what's not fair is that someone is able to write a check for an entire year of their kids' college tuition and their books and their housing and their food and buy them a new Mercedes-Benz convertible. Well, I have to have my kid take out a student loan to go to college. That's not fair. And people don't even look at that. People don't even understand that equation, that part of the equation.
Yeah. Well, they worked hard.
Oh,
that's the argument. They worked hard to get that money.
Yeah.
That's what I hear.
Yeah. Well, I worked hard too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Working hard. Right, Marcus? Working hard.
Yeah, I think the irony there too is that the majority of the people who benefit from these entitlement programs are in some of the reddest states.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's sort of a thing where it's like it's okay if I get it because I know I'm not abusing it, but other people, and when they're thinking about the other people, they're thinking about people in urban areas, basically minorities. They're saying it's not okay for them to have it, but it's okay for me to have it.
Oh, it's a coded racism. Absolutely, that's what it is. It's coded racism.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very subtle.
Yeah, I have an announcement. I took my 99 weeks. I was laid off in 2009, and I needed them all. Every single one of them.
Good.
So, there you go.
That's good. You earned it. You earned
it. Yeah.
You earned it. That's not an entitlement. You earned every penny of that.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, during that time period, when they were talking about extending it, they were pretty much saying that it was an entitlement at the time. Oh, they're just going to sit at home and collect free money. I'm like, I'm sorry, but the free money that I would get would not even cover my mortgage on my house. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's be realistic here.
I was making less than half of what my salary made. And I was able to refinance everything so that I could pay my bills, and I got help with New York had a insurance program called Healthy New York. My kids were covered through their dad, so I was insured, fortunately, and I got my unemployment benefits, and I spent my time looking for jobs, applying for jobs. I applied for a job at a publishing company in New York City and thinking, well, I could commute 3 days a week. I was searching everything. I'm a certified music teacher. Went to unemployment and I told them, I have my master's degree. Could I get into another field? And they're like, nope, you can't because you're already highly qualified.
Right.
So there was really nothing that I could do. There were no jobs here.
Yeah.
So now I'm half-time working and I'm half-time self-employed.
Yeah.
And that's what I have to do.
So essentially what you're saying is we should have, not allowed those 99 weeks for you to cut some spending and reduce some of the money and such, right? because that would have helped.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't have.
No.
The focusing of the energy upon looking at the people who actually need the assistance to the poor. That's one of the greatest things that the Republican Party has done, has made it so that the middle class looks down to the poor rather than, like I said last week, up to the rich.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mhm.
Because they are the ones who can create more jobs.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of how it's going to look on the balance sheet at the end of the year to their investors and how much money all those people will get. And it didn't matter if they laid off, 20% of the workforce. And they still got their bonus and money and such, The focus that needs to change, to the people who are actually making your business grow. And it just isn't that way. It's not that way where it was, I had a manufacturing job and I worked for 30 years and I retired with a pension. It's just not that way.
Mhm.
No. But what about Rovian techniques? What about, take a page from their playbook from Karl Rove. What about going to churches on Sunday and putting flyers under windshields, with the barest facts? This is the millionaire so-and-so. This is what his income was last year. This is what he paid in taxes. Just blanket local areas, boots on the ground. A lot of what Karl Rove did was, when he was putting George Bush up for governor of Texas, was to slander the opposition with accusation of falsehoods. We wouldn't even have to do that. We could just print out flyers. I have a printer. And I'll pay for the ink. And it would just be a picture of whoever, the Walston family, and what they actually earn by doing nothing, sitting on their butts, or going hunting on game reserves or whatever it is that they do. Delineating essentially their bottom lines and their tax burden. Things like that. We can do that. We can organize on a local level.
Mhm.
Get out there and hammer these people.
Yeah.
I'm a very sort of a hands-on type
Yeah.
socialist, communist, pinko capitalist. So,
You saw that T-shirt too, huh?
Yeah, I'm actually. So, my daughters both want one to wear to family gatherings. So.
Aw, that's nice.
Yeah, but I think that we do a lot online to educate people, but I think that it's important to have a component. You guys are in New York. I don't know where you're from, Marcus. Where do you live, Mark?
I live in Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
So
Good
you're
for
right
you.
in the middle of it. Right on.
Yeah, I'm right in the middle of it.
Ugh.
Yeah. So I guess I'm in Wisconsin. We probably have members from all over the United States. And we can talk. We can post memes. We can have video chats and educate people. That's all great. But to actually organize, to put boots on the ground, start local organizations. I'm probably going to be starting in the near future Wisconsin Activist Liberal page, and see what we can organize locally, working with other groups.
Yeah.
Because I have some
really
ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
Point is, go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, I think that having boots on the ground is very powerful, because I think during this past election, right before the election, I went to go canvassing for Obama in Northern Virginia, and it was a really interesting experience, because what I learned from it was, people always say, like, your vote doesn't really count, and, well, Virginia was a close state, but I think that the impression that I got from it was that the campaigns were completely convinced that every vote counts. I think that, sometimes people get very cynical about their votes, but actually, I felt that way in the past, especially, I grew up in Massachusetts, so, being from Massachusetts, there's really never any question about who's going to win the race. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
The attitude from the people on the ground in Virginia was that we need to get every single person we can find and get them to commit to going to the polls on election day. And so I think that the people who really crunch the numbers and really strategize and map things out understand that each person really does count, really does matter.
Yeah.
So I think outreach, and Obama's machine there for getting out the vote, I think is a very powerful thing. And if we were to continue to sort of use that kind of strategy for individual issues, especially for economic and taxation and stuff like that, I think that could be really powerful and really change the discourse and change the agenda a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I was just thinking we're getting here on the hour, and I thought maybe we could take a quick break or something and come back and talk about our next topic about pretty much the fleecing of the working class and how it seems like I don't understand how they're so misled to believe some of these things that they are told. But maybe when we come back from the break, we can discuss the fleecing of the working class and see where we go from there. How about that? Take about a 5-minute break or something.
Cool.
Hey, Marilyn.
Hey.
You're back, aren't you?
I am back.
Did you get yourself a snack?
Yeah, I had a few sunflower seeds and some iced tea.
Very nice. Very nice. That's awesome. So hopefully everyone enjoyed the music. We try to pick something to get us through so you're not entirely bored with waiting for us. Let's see here. So yeah, just before I went to the break, essentially the idea is about the fleecing of the working class. It seems to be it's one of the things that to be fiscally conservative, but another to miss the very people who are fiscal. And their conservatism, they hurt the most. I know this personally to be an issue with some family members, where it's the looking down towards the poor instead of looking up towards the top. How they can so easily manipulate these people to believe the problem is below them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a really complex one. I think that there's a certain grievance that they can sort of play. I think a lot of it has to do with I think that when people are sort of in close contact with their groups, like one thing I noticed, I remember in 2008, in the exit polls from the election, that in places like Iowa, where there's hardly any black people, Obama did really well with poor Christian working class people. But then in places like Mississippi or something, where there's a certain degree of close proximity, I think they didn't do so well. And I think that people have a sense that, the other people, the others who are their neighbors or whatever, are taking their jobs or whatever. But yeah, I think that there's also a strong sense of like, well, they earned it, kind of with the rich. And I mean, maybe in the 60s and 70s during the FDR era, during the New Deal era, maybe there was some truth to that. But I think that since the Reagan era, the tax code and the loopholes and everything have been so skewed to the top that it's really difficult to argue that somebody who works in an office, earns the $100,000 a day that they make or whatever. There really isn't any amount of labor that someone could be doing that is worth that much. So yeah, I mean, I think that it has to do with social interaction between different groups of people and their sense of who's taking what from whom.
Yeah, that's an absolutely valid point. You're looking at we've become divorced in this country from the paradigm that was prevalent in the 40s, 50s, even before that, in the 20s and 30s, when the union movement started to struggle against the image of the the people that made money by doing nothing. And people jumped on the whole anti-communist bandwagon so hard that the idea that all wealth comes from labor is almost anathemic to American thought now. Wealth does come from labor. I go to work, I drive my dump truck. My dump truck makes right around $900 to $1,000 a day. I make a percentage of what that dump truck makes for being the biological guidance unit. I'm the labor. Their wealth comes from my labor, because without me driving that truck sits. Without that truck going to the asphalt plant and loading asphalt, the paver sits. The guys that run the paver run the paver. Without them, the paver sits. Wealth comes from labor. Wealth doesn't come from someone sitting in an office making a bonus of $250,000 per quarter. That's not where wealth comes from. And people, I think back to what you were talking about, Mark, looking at us versus them. We had a much stronger sense in this country. When I was growing up, I was born in 1960, and we had a much stronger sense in this country of who us was, who we are. As a working class, we were much more cohesive. What the right has done very, very well, very effectively, is to tell us that we're not actually part of the working class. We're struggling toward being part of the ruling class, and that if we just give them enough money, somehow working hard enough and giving them enough money will make us part of them, rather than being content being part of us, the working class. And that's a message that needs to change.
Yeah.
Good, Ron.
Oh, I'm just waiting for somebody else to go. I saw this awesome cartoon about the idea of trickle-down economics and how they really did a wonderful job convincing people of exactly what you're talking about there, Patrick, is, well, just keep giving us this money and eventually it'll just naturally fall down on you. You'll get this money, and there's barely, anything coming down. Barely ever.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there are jobs out there that require a lot of work from the mind, and they do sit in cubicles, or they do sit in offices, and they work at a computer all day, and they make six figures. And so that's not to say that every job doesn't deserve that and didn't have a certain amount of work to go into it to earn that kind of money. But at the same time, I think a corporation that had to lay off a third of their workforce, that gives their executives $100,000 to $1 million bonuses for staying in the black this year because they laid those people off, then we've got a serious problem here. We've got a serious disconnect.
Yeah, we definitely do, and it goes to the point where it's the idea is, the problem is not the people who are ahead of you, it's the people who are below you who need help. You know, what happened to the idea of going and helping your fellow man when you need to help them? It's gotten to a point where it's like, no, they don't need a handout. If I give them a handout, they're always going to expect it, and they're always going to just stay in that perpetual place of just being taking the handout all the time. I mean, it's gotten so far ridiculous that in 2011 in Minnesota, they wanted to push legislation to make it a crime for people on public assistance to have more than $20 in cash in their pockets in any given month. That's how disconnected these people were. And the sad thing about that is when they're getting state assistance, welfare assistance. The sad thing is, that was a change from their original proposal of banning them from having any money at all. That's how far
Wow.
disconnected they've gotten from actual reality. It's like these people who are sitting in these legislatures in these states are making a decent amount of money. Well, New York actually makes quite a bit of money. California does too. But to be so disconnected with the people who actually need the assistance, and to think that they have trained so many to look towards the bottom and not towards the top as the problem.
Yeah.
How does this happen in this country?
Well, I think that after World War II, I think a big part of the problem is the end of unions. I think after World War II, I believe more than half of all workers were unionized. I think today it's only something like 7%. I think that over the last half century, the owners, society's owners, have done a really good job of destroying unions. And so, I mean, when you go into negotiate a contract, in the past it was all of the workers versus the owners, and today the owner versus you, basically. And I think also politically, I think Wisconsin was a test case with Scott Walker and the Koch brothers there about. I think that it was very interesting what they did, because they essentially told people who were working in the private sector for maybe only $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, comfortably middle class, that teachers who are making basically the same amount of money, maybe a little bit less, who have their vacations, their pensions, and their health care and stuff, they're saying like they're getting so much more than you. They don't work in the summer, they don't. They get all this health care. They're leeching off the state. The state can't pay its bills because teachers get too much vacation or whatever. And of course, if you've ever worked as a teacher, which I have in Maryland, I know you have, that's baloney. Teachers still are working during the summer, but anyway, I think that just by taking two people who are on essentially the same place in the economy, and drawing a line down the middle of them and saying that these people are taking from you, these people are taking from you, and saying that all of our problems can be solved by taking from them, and what was really interesting about it was that around the same time that Walker was trying to pass this legislation and do these things, he also signed a really sweet deal for large corporations to start doing business in Wisconsin, which was going to drive out smaller businesses. And essentially, the amount of state revenue that was going to go into the coffers of large corporations was essentially equal to the amount of money that he was talking about taking from the teachers. So I mean, he basically convinced middle class people in the private sector, let's take this money from teachers and give it to the Koch brothers, basically. And I think that is a really big part of the problem. This dividing.
And his stated strategy was divide and conquer.
Yeah, he literally said that. That's right.
Yeah. And he did not include the police or firefighters unions.
Yep.
In Act 10, I was standing on the Capitol steps when the firefighters showed up in kilts, beating drums, and playing bagpipes. I was standing there when the cops showed up. Both unions showed up. The firefighters came one day, the police came the next. There were, like I said last week, tens of thousands of people. But the people in rural communities, the people that are isolated, the people that were probably least affected by this, were solidly behind Walker because they sold that message that all these people are in unions and they're getting something that you're not getting, and that's not fair. And that's a bunch of horse pucky.
Yeah.
And, being there was, I've been in a lot of battles. From normal rallies when I was 14 years old in 1974 all the way through. I've been in a lot of battles politically. And that was at the same time one of the most heartening and one of the most disheartening, because I saw us losing the massive effort that we were making at that point by turning up every single day for weeks on end and standing in the cold.
Mhm.
And there was a real sense that we were getting something done, but I could see that we weren't going to prevail in that fight.
Mm.
So, yeah, they sell that message. They sell it really well. They're getting something that you're not getting, and therefore they shouldn't get it either. Just because
Right.
you're not getting it, they don't get it either. And they pit the middle class against the lower class. They pit the upper middle class against the middle class. And the upper class, the wealthiest Americans, stand and laugh and finance the people that do the pitting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it preys on a certain tribal nature of the way people think in general, especially people who haven't been trained to think more analytically and critically. But so people see jobs disappearing, they see their wages going down or stagnating, and they see or they believe they see immigrants and minorities coming into their countries, and they assume that there must be a correlation. And meanwhile, the rich campaign financiers and people are sort of the men behind the curtain. No one knows who they are. People, bloggers like us are aware of who some of these people are, but I think that it's incumbent upon us to sort of educate people who the Koch brothers are, who Sheldon Adelson is,
Mhm.
how much they're taking from you, what they're telling you, why it's not true, and to really, I think the internet is a really powerful tool for educating a lot of people
Yes.
about what's really happening behind the scenes. And I think people are beginning to wake up a bit. I think
Mhm.
some people, I've noticed even in my own family, some people who are pretty stalwartly conservative growing up are beginning to get really fed up with like the Wall Street and the Citizens United and the financing and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I think that even there might not be any hope for the Tea Parties, but I think that even centrist middle of the road conservatives are starting to be like, what the hell,
Yeah.
what's happening here? And so
Yeah.
I think that we need to. It's sort of incumbent upon us to make people think about the higher end of the economy, not just their neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Marilyn and I were talking about this the other day with now that the information is right in front of you. It's with the internet, you can actually look at these issues, research them pretty in depth.
Mhm.
Not like it used to be years ago. And then, of course, me talking years ago wasn't that long, but before the internet became a tool to use for research and things. And that's part of getting that out there as well too, is the information is at your fingertips, but what also comes with understanding politics, it also can also be correlated to understanding of religions as well, and all that knowledge that's out there. And of course, I always go back to the Republicans, conservatives go to that religious part. And what baffles me when we talk about wages, unions, helping the poor, helping the needy, it seems like they think that giving money to their church is helping the poor in some way. And I'm sure there's good charities and things out there that do that type of things, but the ones I grew up with, it wasn't really the case, because you had to pay for a building, you had to pay for this. And again, the problem was not people wanting to help. It was that they were giving their money to the wrong place. It just doesn't trickle down to the people who needed it, even at a religious church level, and I saw that firsthand, and it's kind of sad looking back at that, actually.
Well, that's the Applebee's thing. I mean, look at the recent
Yes.
kerfuffle where the pastor went in and said, "Why should I give you 18%? I give 10% to God." Well, there are a number of things wrong with that statement, starting with, if you're giving 10% to God, doesn't that come right back to you in the form of a paycheck? Secondly, Homer Simpson said it best. I don't know much about God, but I know we built a pretty nice cage for him. You have these ornate, huge. I have within 5 miles of me probably a dozen churches that are just unbelievably huge and ornate with big LED signs outside, flashing, messages of hope and inspiration and recruiting at the same time. Well, I'm pretty sure that, according to the research that I've seen, Jesus was not of a mind to sit inside a building and talk all day long, or have people show up on Sunday and tell them what his interpretation of the Bible was, or not that there was a Bible at that time, but it gets into some very confusing. Well, theologically, everything's confusing to me. But the point is that you have how many literally billions of dollars sitting invested in land and infrastructure within 5 miles of me. And where could that money be better directed? These people are sitting in the pulpit and they're saying, not in so many words like you were talking about last week, Tom, we're not going to tell you who to vote for, but clearly this is the candidate that we would choose if we were going to vote for someone.
Yeah.
Tax them. Tax the holy hell out of them. And pun intended.
The holy hell.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think there was a graphic going around that talked about taxing the churches, which essentially would equate to, $70-80 billion in tax revenue per year. It's a lot of money, and I think I mentioned last week, one particular church that comes to mind, how they spend part of their tithe into money market and stock accounts to increase revenue for their own church.
Yeah, that's not okay.
No,
that's super not okay. Yeah. It's like, if you're going to be a nonprofit organization, be a nonprofit organization. Put the money to the poor. My church, we have a food pantry that we give to. We collect food for it. We give money to it. We have youth ministry programs. They go bag it. We serve it. We have a lunch program all summer long that takes the inner city kids, and we feed them free lunches all summer. There's lots of things that can be done non-for-profit, and those types of things are fine. But when you start taking your tithe money, gambling with it, it's like, come on. Really?
It is gambling.
Yeah,
it is.
It is gambling. And Marilyn, I don't know if it's the same for you as it was for me, but for me growing up, in order to get that free lunch, they had to sit through a sermon or a message of some sort.
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Well, as a
Absolutely
Catholic,
not.
I've seen that same sort of model used as a Catholic. So, you'll sit through an hour of indoctrination on being pro-life. Here's your peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah.
I think it probably has a lot to do with the individual pastor, priest, preacher, flying spaghetti monster, what have you. I mean, it's just a matter of, but what would happen if the government stepped in and said, look, we're going to put a monitor out here. You might not know he's there, the FBI, whoever, and if you talk about politics from the pulpit, we're going to levy a tax, and you can deal with the IRS. We're just out of it. If you're going to talk about it, we're just going to tax you at the same rate that we tax any other business.
Yeah.
Or I guess political advocacy group. Because that's what they're doing. They're advocating.
Yeah. I mean, the whole purpose of it, in my opinion, is to focus on the humanitarian side. So just do just that. Focus on, the giving, and doing good things for the people who are less fortunate. And that in itself is Christ's work. That is what they espouse to be. You don't have to go around telling everybody else how they should live. That actually...
Well, you're getting to an area that's kind of... I I don't know. I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking that when I think of a nonprofit organization, the majority of the money is going back out for aid of whatever they are doing, and I bet you, because they don't have to report their, what they brought in receipts. I know they can. They don't have to do it, but I bet you would find at this one particular place that I'm thinking of that they have brand new HD equipment, video cameras, high def screens, multiple locations that they're probably, maybe sending back out maybe 30% of the money. Yet we don't know. When I think of nonprofit, I think of those companies that are spending a majority of their money back out into whatever they're involved with, and yeah, sure.
I mean, I belong to one, and I get whatever isn't spent on administration.
Goes back to this point here of,
I get money in my account. It goes back to the members.
Yeah. It goes to the point of how have they so easily fleeced the people, the working class people, the hardworking people, that the Occupy movement, for example, is so absolutely terrible. They really have. Yeah.
They're disorganized completely.
Yeah.
They have no message. I mean, they're great at camping. Good enough.
Yes.
Good campers.
Message? What is your message? I just...
What do you want? Okay, you've occupied. Now what do you want?
Yeah, I know here in the Capitol, the district attorney would not prosecute one single person from the protests, camping out in the middle of the park right across from the Capitol and such. But yeah, I guess like you said, I think I understand part of what the idea is, but they are disorganized, and I think that was part of what they said. Well, we don't want any one specific leader. Well, if you want to get your message across, you probably need to organize a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. So where does our message come from? Their message comes from the well-heeled, well-financed corporations, churches. They run ads, they run PSAs, they run all sorts of things that are targeted and meant to impart a single message, which is that if they're getting something that you don't have, then they're wrong and they should have it taken away. Not everybody should have it, but they shouldn't have it because you don't have it. And I think that, where is our message coming from? We don't have the churches. We don't have the Koch brothers. We, go back. I'm starting to sound naggy, but we have to go back to this boots on the ground thing where we're imparting this message cohesively every single day to... I do it on my CB radio in my dump truck. I am constantly talking to people about, look, this is what's really going on. And I'm seriously thinking about, I'm a little long in the tooth to be starting a new boots on the ground organization, but I think I'm going to have to. I don't think that I'll be able to sleep very well at night if I don't start doing something on the ground
Feeling
again.
like you're doing something, yeah.
So
yeah, there are just so many things that are to be done. I started my video campaign today, as a message for Congress. Yeah, I'm sick and tired of the filibustering, and I got the idea because my Senator Kirsten Gillibrand made mention on her Facebook page about how she and Mark Kirk got together and co-sponsored a bill together to make gun trafficking a federal crime. And, whether or not you agree with this bill, I thought it was really, really good to see a Republican and a Democrat coming together and putting something together. And I think we really, really, really need to have more of that going on in Congress, because the more bipartisan we are in Washington, just the further apart we're going to stray. And this country is so diverse culturally, every section of it. And we're never going to be able to come together if you know, our Congress, our Senate, and our House of Representatives just cannot pull it together in a room. So, yeah, that's my little spiel. You know.
No, you're right, and I liked your video.
Thanks.
Very good.
Not just on Facebook. I didn't just hit the button. I actually liked it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
It's a good
think,
message.
I liked your video too. I listened to it. I thought it was good. It was very well
Thanks.
thought out. You sounded passionate for it. I
Mhm.
think that the next couple of years is going to be really interesting because I think that this is the strongest that Democrats have been, at least since the beginning of the Clinton years, if not even since like Kennedy or even maybe FDR. I think, and I think that whatever is going on across the aisle is going to be a reflection of the Republicans' weakness, in the fact that they've sort of painted themselves into a corner. I mean, I think that you saw that with the fiscal cliff and really with the debt ceiling. With the fiscal cliff, they got a little bit of what they wanted, but I think Obama really won that fight. Then with the debt ceiling, they not only backed down, but they did it. Did you see when they made that announcement on the Friday afternoon before inauguration? They did it in such a way that to minimize media coverage of their decision not to fight the debt ceiling. I think that the Republicans know that they're backed into a corner and they've paid themselves into a corner. And
Yes.
they really don't know what to do about it anymore, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that Obama and the Democrats have gotten them to the point where, you know, the country sort of sees what they're doing largely in terms of helping the rich. And I think Romney really maybe hurt them with that. But they're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place with, like, you know, do we work with the Democrats and potentially piss off the Tea Party base and piss off the rich financiers, or do we stand our ground and become, you know, sort of a permanent minority party in the party of, like, guano crazy ideologues? And I think especially I think 2 years from now, you're going to start to see the Tea Party sort of house people versus Chris Christie and Bobby Jindal and people who are going to try to run for president. And I think that's already beginning now when you have Bobby Jindal out there saying, you know, we can't be the stupid party, and Chris Christie, you know, is yelling at the House over Hurricane Sandy stuff. But I think that in two years from now, once Obama begins his lame duck term, I think that there's really going to be a civil war on the right, I think. So I think that what the Democrats do in the next 2 years is very important because they might not have this kind of political opportunity again for a long time. And if we have to do that in the name of reaching across the aisle, that's fine. But they really need to use this window of opportunity for something good.
Yeah.
Now here I thought that Obama was going to try to, you know, get term limits thrown out and become the king of the
The king of America.
Americas.
Third term.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they
you know
downgraded.
that bill was sent from a representative from New York. Tried to get that amendment repealed.
Right. It just that's a pipe dream. But I do think that, you know, if you look at what Obama does, he stays on message, and he says, look, these are tax breaks for the wealthiest Americans, and what they're doing is essentially screwing you out of basic social services, infrastructure repairs. He just lays it on the line. Whether he's a lame duck or not, I don't think he's going to stray far from that message. I think people like Clinton, people like Obama, people like Jimmy Carter have a huge value to our party, and I see our party as the party of at least mostly social justice. I mean, they work for the working class, and I think the Obamas and the Clintons and the people on the left have been very successful at selling the message that the Republicans are working for the rich, and we have to stand behind them and say, look, that's exactly what's going on. The Republicans are working for the rich. They're bought and paid for by the richest people in this country. The Democrats are out there working to get you what you need. in the way of unemployment benefits, in the way of social safety nets, in the way of health care. I can't wait till Obamacare kicks in fully and I can get the hell out of my private insurance company and pay for my own insurance. I'm lucky enough to have a company that pays me a financial benefit if I don't take their guano insurance. Thanks for the word, Mark. Yeah. So I think that that's the message that needs to be played
really
over
sent in
and
there.
over. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't care about you. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. Republicans do not care. All they care about is keeping their pockets lined with money.
You're a number. You're just one number.
You're a number, and you go out and do their bidding for them.
Yeah.
I mean, so not only are you taken advantage of, but you're also a stooge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Ultimately, I think the Republicans did this to themselves, though. I mean, in the last election, they kept talking about, we're going to make sure that small businesses can hire people. But how many people in America own a small business? That's not. You can't build a coalition on small business owners.
Yeah.
It was almost like they were systematically trying to piss off each major constituency in the country. They really the self-deportation for Hispanics, and claiming all sorts of crazy things about black people with the president. Picking a presidential nominee who was part of a church that said that black people were devils until 1968. Women, saying that women's bodies can stop an abortion and things like that.
Oh, God.
Don't you know we have a whole way to just shut that down?
We don't want these people to vote for us. We don't want these people to vote for us. They really have done this to themselves. I mean, the Democrats need to just, there was a meme that was going around that was basically saying like, liberals hate Sean Hannity because he lies. Conservatives hate Rachel Maddow because she tells the truth.
Yeah,
that's essentially the paradigm that Republicans have created for themselves.
Yeah. So maybe at this point, all the Democrats have to do is just sort of sit back and twiddle their thumbs and wait before they, self-implode.
We did that in the 80s and it didn't work.
That's true. That's true. So we do need to do what we need to do.
We have to show leadership and be strong. I think. Yeah. But I think if Obama pushes, that's what will break the recalcitrance, because if Obama is saying, look, I'm trying to do something for the middle class, and Republicans are saying, we'll never do anything with you, then that, skewers them, essentially.
Yeah.
The horns of his dilemma.
Yeah. But,
Absolutely.
like Tom said, leadership. And I think Obama's, doing a really good job. Uncle Joe actually does a pretty good job. He tends to, say his filter's completely clogged, let's face it. But he's a great guy, and he does say, what most of us are thinking anyway. And the message is very clear, I think, at this point. After the last, over, 30 years of trickle-down economics, it's clearly an experiment that did not work. And what I've noticed is that there's a pendulum effect, and I grew up, 60s and the 70s, and we were way to the left back then, and Nixon screwed up bad. It was great. But, we swung so far to the left, and now I think, we've seen the swing to the right. It's been perpetuated by the moneyed interests, probably longer than it should have lasted. So, yeah, it's imploding, absolutely. But when it does implode, there's going to be fallout. There's a lot of guys out there with AR-15s that think that there's some sort of conspiracy to put them into, 2-star FEMA camps. I know the FEMA camps are probably all 4-star by now. I mean, look at the money being spent. But, there's a lot of lunatic fringe crap going on out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with the advent of the internet, they have a voice too, just like we do right now.
Yeah.
People have a choice of what they're going to believe, and go back to the beginning where it's like, that sounds like it's good for me. I agree with that. On the surface, it sounds correct that, why should a white person be able to marry a black person? I mean, that's the argument that was how many years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So
the 1960s. It was into the 1960s.
you
People
know,
are out
even though in the 1980s, though, I've got a very young priest who likes to tell us that his parents were not allowed to get married until 1981.
Really?
You know, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, my daughter is in a relationship with an African American guy. Really nice guy. I like him quite a bit. He's a smart ass like me, so we get along.
Nice.
She told me right up front, yeah, he's a black guy, and she had to wait for about a year and a half before she told me he was a cop and a Republican. And she knew that was sticking
That's
point
worse.
for me.
Oh,
It is worse.
Oh man.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Wow.
you know, I think it's mostly cultural. I think that, you know, what we're taught growing up is what's going to influence our thought process. But to get to know people on an individual, case by case level is what's going to change things. It's talking to people. These video chats are great, but we're all on the same page.
Yes.
You know, I got into a conversation with a guy that emigrated from Bulgaria today. He's related to me. He's my niece's husband. And he's of the opinion that we need a benevolent dictatorship in the United States. He pointed to China as an example.
Ooh.
And yeah, there's a friend of mine. That's,
You're right there, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I you know, and so I'm working on him.
Yeah.
I'm working on him. So
Yeah.
y'all working on people too, or are we?
Oh. Working on people. I'm doing it from afar because everybody I live near agrees with me.
No, not me so much, but you know, I've tried to. For me, it's mostly family, so it gets into some heated discussions, and
Yeah,
usually,
you can't mess politics and religion with family.
well, and I do, and you know, it usually ends up ending with, "We'll see how it ends when I'm dead." You know, it's like.
Well, I'm not going to say that. Families, yeah, that's some good stuff. I mean, my family loves to talk. That's all we talk about. Religion and politics.
I feel they need to convert me back. You know, I'm the one who is wrong for wanting to help people who are poor and need the assistance.
Yeah. You must be the black sheep. You're the black sheep of the Republican Christian family.
Yes, I am. That's okay.
Yeah, it is okay.
I still love my family. But it's not about my family, right? It's it's about getting boots on the ground, getting involved with local groups, your own groups, and spreading the word. And we had some people came around here during the last elections and hearing the stories from the campaign workers walking up, you know, just around the corner. Must have been a Republican house because the guy came screaming out of his house saying, "Get off my property," you know, because they knew those people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. So it's even to that level, walking around, making sure people are getting out to the polls, you know, just like in Virginia there. Making them informed to understand when they have questions, to actually give them a response, you know, and not give them a look of, I'll have to get back to you, because you lost them at that point. You got to be ready. You got to know. I listen to the right-wing talk shows. I listen to them. I know what their talking points are, and I know how to respond to them when they ask me, you know, questions. That's what we need to get to.
Fact-based observations rather than, well, that's just my opinion. No, that's not an opinion, it's fact. There's a big difference between opinions and facts.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of you know, individual guerrilla operations. Gee, you know, ORILLA, no. Like for instance, I was extremely opposed to the most recent Iraq war. I mean, I knew from the get-go that was just a crock of crap.
Yeah.
And everybody in my neighborhood started showing up with these magnetic ribbons support our troops on them. And
Yeah.
they were color-coded to the cars for the most part. Support our troops, and it was everywhere. And if you had a red car, you had a red one. And so I went to the hardware store and I bought some electrical tape in different colors. And what I would do is I would cut off a small piece of electrical tape every time I saw one of these that matched the sticker, and I would shorten troops to oops. Support our oops.
Mm.
And there was a friend of my girlfriend's. She worked with the guy, and I did it on his car. And he drove around for, it must have been the better part of 3 weeks with this thing on there.
Wow.
And finally I called his attention to it, and I said, hey, Tim, I do support your oops. I really do. What in the... And he went on and on and on, but I bet I did it to 500 cars.
Oh my God.
Yeah, every time I saw it, I just carried the stuff with me wherever I went, and when I saw it, I just covered it up.
Mhm.
You know, and I have friends that enlisted and went over there, or were in and went over there, or whatever.
Mhm.
I have a nephew that's in right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, go ahead, knock yourself out. Military service, that's fine. Whatever you want to do. But if there's an unjust thing happening, I'm going to point it out.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes. So, you know, there are small things, creative things. I mean, I viewed it as performance art.
Mhm.
So, and all of you watching who know me, then yeah, you're not really surprised, are you?
It's avant-garde.
Yeah. Well, I am an artist, so kind of what I do. But you know, there are things serious. It was my way of pointing out that this was not something that they should be supporting.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether there were troops involved or not.
Yeah.
You know, support 3 Mile Island, support Chernobyl.
Mhm.
Really? Why?
Mhm.
It's wrong. It's just
Yeah.
wrong, period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why they always emphasize we're supporting our troops, but not the war.
Yeah, I don't buy
Right.
that. I don't buy
Yeah.
it.
I don't buy it either.
No. And I've always had that in my heart, and that just sided with me. It's like, you know, why aren't we the world's policemen with that? You know, we talked a little bit about that last week, but, you know, what, $600-700 billion goes just for military spending, you know,
Mhm.
and new weapons technologies and things like that. I think we're pretty well ahead of the game with the rest of the world. I think we can relax, but no, that's not what happens, because Iran's going to get a nuclear weapon next and blow up Israel, and we got to support Israel because Israel is the place of, you know, God's chosen people, whatever people want to throw out there, and they're our ally in the Middle East, and blah 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 blah.
They're our
You know.
military base.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
but you know, the point though is that that money that's spent on our military, that's a lot of money.
Well, it's 15.8% of the GDP last time I looked, and that's exactly what the Heritage Foundation called for in their project for a New American Century paper.
Heritage.
So, you know, they got everything they wanted. The project for a New American Century paper was followed right down the line by Bush, Rumsfeld, Cheney, and the rest of the neocons. They wrote it and they implemented it by caveat, by executive order. So, you know, it's ridiculous. You know, defense from what? You know?
Yeah.
Oh, Patrick, I could tell you some things that I have seen that are just absolutely ridiculous with military spending.
I'm listening.
Oh, well, we were stationed in Germany, we were in Denver, and we got orders to move to Germany. And they told us, do not pack a thing. We will get these companies, these moving companies, they will come up and pack everything for you. And leave everything plugged into the walls, because everything has to be working in working conditions, so that if it's broken by the time it gets over there, it's insured, and we know that the moving company broke it and they'll have to pay for it. So don't pack a thing, don't lift a finger. We will hire a company to do it 100% for you. That was moving in the military.
Wow.
Every time. Oh, I've got better.
Even your car too, right?
Yeah, they moved our car. You're only allowed one. You're only allowed
Oh.
to move one car. But they shipped our car overseas on a boat. Took about 3 months for us to get it finally, but we did get it. And then I think the most appalling thing that I saw was a couple where the husband was in, and the his wife was not in the military, but they were stationed over there, and she got cosmetic surgery because their personal relationship was not up to par. They went to a military psychologist and said, well, it would be better if her chest was bigger. And she got cosmetic surgery.
Oh my God.
Paid for by our tax dollars.
Wow.
This is the kind of crap that goes on.
Wow, that's
National security.
It's a national security issue.
Those
well,
need to
thank
be the
God.
right
Thank
size
God.
and
I feel
they're getting
safer
data.
under her boobs. Yeah, I feel much safer under the comforting shelf of her breasts. Awesome.
Wow.
What a mess.
Yeah. I will say, that is rumor. I don't know for sure. I do know that she did get breast implants because, I saw the difference, but what else is going to cover it? You have military
You're checking it out.
insurance. All your health
I
insurance is
believe it.
covered by the military. So
Yeah.
what are you going to do?
Well, I
Use
know
it.
for a fact that they're not. Yeah, I would use it too. I mean, because it's a health benefit. I don't know that I'd ever get elective surgery. I mean, I'm pretty beautiful anyway. But
Oh, yeah.
anyway, the thing is that I remember there were a lot of anecdotal examples brought out in the 80s and 90s about $20,000 toilet seats and $30,000 coffee makers, and
Yeah.
I just wonder how much of this is being funneled into Blackwater. How much of this is being funneled into private homeland security operations? How much of this is being privatized and put back into the pockets of the board of the Carlyle Group?
Yeah.
I know I'm getting into some pretty arcane stuff here, but I researched this, and you look at the amount of money that's being laid out, and it's almost completely unaccounted for. It's almost like putting it into a church basket.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have been asking for transparency. Audit the Fed. Let's see what's going on in the Federal Reserve, and they won't let us know. And the bottom line is that there would be utter chaos. The people would revolt if they knew where this money is going.
Yeah, or where it's coming from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Would they revolt though?
I don't really know, because it seems like half of them don't even want to believe that it's happening anyway. They would just look the other way and say, "Oh, I don't even believe that." It's like it's right in your face. Well, my Republican Tea Party representative told me just to look the other way, so that's what I'm going to do.
Well, American Idol's on tonight, so.
Oh,
Right.
Oh, it is?
No, that's what I'm saying. It's a reality show. It's even to that level too. It's like dumbing down on people who want to watch reality television shows. I don't get it.
Yeah, I can feel my IQ dropping. Right now, we're just talking about it, and I can feel my IQ dropping. No, more people voting in American Idol than vote in national presidential elections.
Yes.
Really?
What? It's just absolutely
Sad.
stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Very sad.
That way, it would be sad if it weren't so damn funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Although the American Idol vote is probably more accurate. Than
It probably is.
Yeah, I don't
Really
know
up there,
where
Tom.
to go.
It's my little poodle.
Hey, Poodle. Hey, dog.
Is she
Yes,
a liberal poodle?
Yes, she's a liberal poodle. We talked last week about, gay people and getting married, and the next step was moving on to bestiality, and I could not think about
I thought
that.
you were going to tell us you have a gay poodle.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Oh, speaking of which, did y'all see in Tennessee where a guy took his pit bull in because it was gay to
Oh,
a high
Jesus.
kill shelter? Yeah, they were going to put this dog down. It was a bull, and humping is a sign of dominance in dogs. I mean, anybody that knows dogs. Well, this guy saw his dog dominating another male dog, and in his mind, this dog was gay, and he didn't want it anymore. So he took it to a high kill shelter. The dog's been rescued since, but this is the kind of nonsense we're dealing with. The American Idol mentality. Gay dogs.
Wow.
Gay dogs.
Amazing.
And even if the dog was gay, let's say the dog was gay. Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, good. I got a gay dog. Great. You know, that's awesome. It can be fabulous.
Exactly.
My fabulous gay dog.
Yeah.
Goodness.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like we're at 11 o'clock here on our Eastern Standard Time. So what do you say we wrap it up for tonight? Hopefully, we had quite a few viewers tonight. It looks like last week we had about 91 views on our original post, so that's kind of nice. So,
yeah.
But, you know, last week we ended up with some last words. So who wants to go first tonight? Okay, I will. I just want to point out, the discussion about we could talk all we want unless we have some movement or motivation to get out there and do some things. We're not going to do anything unless we do that. So I would say that getting more involved locally on your own level, talking to people when it comes time for elections, to whatever, get the vote out, to whatever it is that you can do to try to dispel some of the myths that are coming out of the other side, is what you can do to get this going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You want to go, Marilyn?
No, you can go.
Okay. Yeah, just second what Tom said, and what I do personally is, like I said, guerrilla activism. Any creative thing you can think of to try to make people have that little light bulb go on. And I also try very hard to get one person a week to question what they believe by offering facts and ideas instead of beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Marilyn?
Like I said, mine's a little bit harder because most of the people I am surrounded by already agree with me. I think I want to take it on a different level with the video campaigning and really trying to reach out that way and really highlighting, like I said, highlight the good that is being done in Congress and really highlight the filibustering that is not helpful at all. So that's
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, and I want to say that I think that, as I was saying, I think this is a really interesting time period right now for progressives because I think that the Democrats are more dominant than they have been in a very long time. But I think that, even though here in Washington the Democrats are on the up and up, we still need to have people in the streets and talking to people and getting boots on the ground, as we were saying. And so I think we all need to make our presence felt here. My shtick with my blog and on Facebook is mostly to make fun of the right and some of the zaniness, and also to analyze it and try to educate people about the facts of the economy and history and sort of political strategizing. So we have a lot of fun on my Facebook page, so come check it out. It's Mark Belisle, blogger at allthingsdemocrat.com.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Make sure you post that on Liberal Voice too, so we can have some more information about that. That'd be great. Hopefully we'll have more people to join us for next week. Maybe we'll have an opposing side of some sort or a special guest. That would be nice. It was great seeing you all again tonight. Appreciate it. And hopefully you guys have a great rest of the weekend.
You guys too.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night.